It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
It is time to get into all things soccer on the men's and women's side here on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. So joining us, we've got Charles Boehm, a freelance writer and editor contributing to over 4 soccer outlets, including the MLS and Soccer Wire. So Charles, welcome to the show.
It's such a pleasure to be with you, Renee. Thanks for the invite.
Of course. And I'm excited to have you here because as we're getting into the start of March, we are also getting into a lot of different soccer, whether it's the U.S. women's national team getting ready for the She Believes Cup, or the start of the MLS and the NWSL with their schedule recently released. And I'm happy to have you here. So let's start on the women's side. We'll go ladies first.
All right.
The NWSL did release their schedule, and I know I had on my show a couple weeks back GM Elise LaHue of Sky Blue talking about the growth of the league. What's something that you're really looking forward to as we're seeing, another season under our belts getting started for the NWSL? Teams are looking, whether it's Sky Blue bringing in Red Bull Arena as their home stadium now, or different changes we've seen leading up to the start of the season to make this better than the past. So thoughts on what you expect as we start another NWSL.
Yeah, it's appropriate that you mentioned Elise LaHue and Sky Blue, the New Jersey club that has to some extent been a little bit of a straggler in NWSL, both on and off the field, because of their struggles to find an appropriate location that has both the connects with fans and is affordable for the team to operate. They were at Rutgers University for the last several seasons, and it was subpar in terms of where the league was trying to go for the facilities, the experience, the TV product. So they've moved into Red Bull Arena, which they'll share with the New York Red Bulls. And that's a really exciting move for this club because it's just a beautiful sort of almost like a theater of a soccer specific venue. It'll have a great pitch, great acoustics. Even though they won't fill it up, it's going to be a nice setting and also very accessible for large swaths of the tri-state area. And people from New York can hop on a train and come across the river. Mm-hmm. And so that's a club that has done a lot of good things off the field, and now they have to back it up with tangible progress in terms of the results on the field once they kick off in April. And then I'm here in Washington, D.C., and a lot of eyes on the Washington Spirit as well, another club that's trying to sort of get to a next level of performance, professionalism, atmosphere. So they're going to be playing their home matches across 3 different venues in the DMV region, in a kind of a partnership with DC United. And the ones that people like me who live in the city are most excited about are the 4 matches at Audi Field, which is the DC United's downtown venue. That's again been a great experience for the few Spirit games they've had over the past 2 years there, and everybody's looking to see how they make their moves. And of course, then you also have the established powers in this league, the North Carolina Courage. Are straight up, we can call them a dynasty at this point. They've won the last 2 league championships. They're always in the reckoning in terms of the top honors in NWSL, and their culture is excellent. Even when they lose players to national team duty, they always perform at a high level. Got to have a conversation with their head coach, Paul Riley, yesterday, and I think they're, again, going to be the team to beat. And Portland Thorns, out in the most soccer crazy market in NWSL, are going to be trying to knock the Courage off the perch. And so there's some fun storylines all across NWSL this year.
There are, and it's great you got the chance to catch up with Paul Riley. He's such a well-known soccer coach, of course, having coached in Portland for a number of years. And it's no surprise that him and the Courage have been a team that's the top dog of the league at this point, because when you look at the players as well as himself, players like Alex Morgan, of course, Paul Riley being at the helm, you got to expect success. But looking at moving,
And Renee, if I could interject to just to toot my own horn a little bit here, I'm involved in a podcast, a weekly podcast for soccerwire.com, and the conversation I had with Paul Riley is going to run as a podcast next week. So I encourage everybody to check that out, Soccer Wire podcast on whatever vehicles you listen to podcasts on. Just to do a little self promotion there, but it's a great conversation, and yeah, so looking forward to that one, and of course there's a lot of national team stuff, which you should probably get into as well.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you had the chance to promote that, because that is something that, I know, given Paul Riley's history, I'm sure that was a tremendous conversation to even have the opportunity to get into.
He's a great quote for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But there are a lot of exciting things to look forward to for the NWSL, of course, with the start of another season coming up, as well as the next season when we have an expansion team in Louisville joining the league. So it's a great time for women's soccer, which takes me perfectly into the She Believes Cup. So I keep wanting to say Cup. I don't know why. She Believes Cup. And I mean, this is something I know for me, even coaching youth soccer still, my players are always looking forward to it. The chance to see the U.S. women's national team as they compete against other top teams from around the world right here in your own backyard. And I think it's something that as we talk more and more about the impact of the U.S. women's national team, not only on soccer, but on all sports, female sports especially, this is a great opportunity to be able to see them get autographs, get pictures, get out to games, which is something that's so pivotal for the growth of the game. So it's an exciting time, without a doubt.
Well, and this tournament is typically a high level of soccer, even though it's it's only a few years old. They typically bring in really top teams from Europe or South America,
Mm-hmm.
and the imbalances, unfortunately, in women's international soccer are such that there's not that many games and opponents where the U.S. women can go have someone that'll go toe to toe with them and really test them. And so that's what this tournament is really key for.
Yeah, I agree, and that's something that I think, to be able to have the opportunity to play some of the top teams like Spain, like England, and that you're seeing in the tournament, it does allow for them to actually, I hate to say get challenged, but that's the truth. As we mentioned, there is the dominance of the U.S. women's national team as we've seen play out in the years past. So I'm also excited to see how Ananovsky steps in with the women's national team, getting a chance to fill the big shoes that are left there and make his mark, as we're finally, getting a chance to see how he's going to step into that role as head coach of the women's national team. So should be interesting.
Yeah, he's a coach I really have enjoyed watching him work in NWSL the last several years. His teams have an identity. Typically, they have a great spirit. He's really popular among his players, and a lot of people around the sport in this country are thinking and expecting and hoping that he's going to even be able to build further on what Jill Ellis did.
Yeah, and I think that's something. I know I had a conversation back when it was announced that he was going to become the head coach of the team. Jill Ellis she's been the most successful women's national team coach and one of the most successful in soccer across men's and women's side. And she definitely left some big shoes to fill, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. But I think that, as you mentioned, for him, Vlatko Ananovsky coming into this role, he has the established relationships necessary to really step in and show, and for people to understand he's not Jill Ellis, but he's going to bring something unique, hopefully, to the team. At least I hope. And I think so. I have faith in him. But I'm curious to know your thoughts on the men's side as we get the MLS is getting started as well. So as we talked about at the beginning of this, there are so many exciting things going on in soccer right now. And I think the fact that we can even look into the start of the season and really be a little bit unsure about who we can expect to win it all. And I hate to even get that far ahead, but, week one's getting started. I know people are getting excited to get back out to games. The weather has been beautiful, especially here in the Jersey area. What are you looking forward to, or who, I guess I should say, are you looking forward to this MLS season to really step up and surprise us a little bit more than last season, whether it was an injury or, an off-season change, roster change? Who are you really looking forward to as the guide to watch, or the team to watch, I should say?
Yeah, I hope you don't believe in jinxes, because we've had a mild winter here in DC as well, and I know as soon as we talk about it, that means that we're going to have hailstorms and
Oh,
blizzards
yes.
for the first 2 months of the MLS season, which is actually kicking off earlier than any season in history. And the league is still. I wrote a piece actually about this week, that the schedule has been this ongoing subject of conversation and discussion, and sometimes cussing around MLS, because last year they shortened the season by a month. It
Mm-hmm.
appears to be a result of this kind of big strategic blueprint that the Boston Consulting Group presented, a long-range study they did for the league 4 years ago, where they suggested moving the season's closing dates up in order to play in better weather in the fall and not go so far into the winter at the end of the season, and have less competition for television ratings and television placement. And so the flip side to that is they finished a month ahead of schedule last year, and then they're kicking off a week earlier this year, and probably will continue to kind of shift the opening of the season further into February, which is kind of a gamble. Usually you can get some nasty weather in large parts of the U.S. and Canada during that during this time of year, and you kind of have to hope for the best, and kind of find the balance between maximizing your schedule in terms of an entertainment product and a television product that you're trying to get more rights money for, while also having a long enough season that players in the United States and Canada don't have a huge off season where they're having to sit around and do work on their own or go on off-season training stints,
Exactly.
because the MLS season is still about a month shorter overall than most of Europe's club calendars, even though it's by far, I think by some distance, the longest professional sports season in this country. So it's kind of an interesting balance that they're dealing with, and we'll see. And hopefully the preseasons the preseason training of the last 5 to 6 weeks gets these players able to perform at a high level with this early start.
That's a great point you bring on. I do think we've been so fortunate that we even have had this tremendous weather. So it is very fitting that as they start the season earlier than years past, we also have had great weather, at least in this part of the country. Can't speak for some of the other parts of the country that have been getting snow and those inclement weather. But that is something that, as you and I were talking about even before the interview, that for soccer, that is always a factor. But it's also kind of an expectation that you, in the early months of the spring season and the late months of the fall season, that you never know what you're going to get. So that part it kind of comes with, or definitely comes with, being a soccer player. So as we look forward to this season, I mean, everyone's looking to be better, obviously, except for Seattle, since they'd like to just continue and win another championship. But who do you think is really going to come into this season and be, whether it's a turnaround to make a farther run in the playoffs, or getting to the MLS Cup, winning the MLS Cup? Any teams that you see? Again, we're really jumping the gun here. It's February, but I like to put people on the spot and get predictions all the time. So just 2 teams that you think are going to have a better season record, performance, whatever it is that you want to look at to measure that, than last year.
Well, I would answer that this way. There's kind of at the 2 of the more interesting plot lines for me this season are, we have 2 new expansion clubs coming online in Nashville SC and Inter Miami, and those are typically expansion clubs struggle, but the wealth that Miami have with David Beckham and Jorge Mas and their ownership group, and the ambition where they want to kind of attack this really promising but tricky market in Miami and the South Florida region. And so they spent a lot of money. They spent $12 million transfer fee on a Mexican player named Rodolfo Pizarro. They are possibly going to try and kind of defy the traditional expansion blues that new teams suffer, and try and follow the Atlanta LAFC model of competing right out of the gate at a high level, with a lot of ambition off the field as well, in terms of the product you're offering to fans as you try and kind of make a splash. MLS spent a few years in the Miami market with the Miami Fusion from 1998 to 2001, which was quite a long time ago now, but they were actually in Fort Lauderdale rather than Miami proper. And so one of MLS's real focuses for going back to Miami was they had to have the stadium downtown, in the heart of Miami. They've had these issues and political complications with their efforts to build a permanent home at Miami Freedom Park, which is near the international airport down in Miami. And so instead they're stuck back at the exact same place, the former site of Lockhart Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, where they built a temporary stadium that they're going to play in. They hope for only the first 2 seasons while the Miami home is built. And then they've also got a new training facility. So that's a very intriguing, possibly drama heavy. You've got David Beckham and a lot of kind of international juice that Miami can command. And then out on the West Coast, I'll cheat a little and name 2 teams. The 2 LA teams, LAFC are the defending Supporter Shield champs. They were by far the best team last regular season, but fell short in the postseason. Everyone's eager to see if they can take it to another level and win the league championship. And then their crosstown rivals, the LA Galaxy, have continued to spend big money and try and make a splash and stay relevant in that SoCal rivalry. They went out and got Javier Chicharito Hernandez, one of the most popular and successful Mexican players of his generation, to come on a big transfer deal. So that there's the soccer capital of MLS, at least right now, is SoCal. And should be lots of drama as those teams play in their El Tráfico matchups.
Yeah, and we saw those 2 have better ticket sales than at times the Lakers or other, like they right now are, as you mentioned, a hotbed for American soccer with the MLS, because you do have such an incredible crosstown rivalry, and to watch how they play out and having some of the best players in the league on their team makes it even better. It just, that LA Galaxy LAFC rivalry is fun to watch. So that almost may answer the question that I'm going to ask you next, but who knows, maybe you'll have another one. Do you have any specific games that you're looking forward to? Any teams that you're, whether it's, watching Miami or Nashville step into their first game and play a specific opponent, or a crosstown rivalry, or maybe there are a lot of rivalries around the league, but any specific games on your calendar that you've got circled early on in the season that to you are a test to see, okay, this is going to be a great opportunity to see how much stronger this team is than last year, or how much stronger this expansion team is than predicted?
Mm-hmm. So, of course, as I mentioned, those LAFC LA games, they had tons of star power last year with Zlatan Ibrahimovic versus Carlos Vela. Zlatan has moved on. He's gone back to Europe, but the Chicharito versus Vela sort of star power is going to be fun. And the playoff game that they played was probably one of the most hyped MLS games ever last season. And it mostly lived up to things. It was an 8-goal game and a really fun entertainment product. So those for sure, watch out for those El Tráficos. Then one of the opening weekend matches that's got a lot of attention is Nashville's first game. They are hosting Atlanta United, who have been sort of the big splash in the South, with, again, one of those teams really pushing the envelope in MLS in terms of spending and ambitions. Nashville is not quite so flashy. I think they aspire to get up to that level at some point, but right now they've kind of taken a little more pragmatic approach to building their team, and they're an organization that's moving up from USL second division up to MLS. So a time of transition, and they want to build a rivalry with Atlanta and have kind of a Southern derby. I don't know if they've done anything official yet, but they would ideally have those things kind of take root organically between the different groups of fans. And so there's the game at Nissan Stadium, which is the Titans NFL stadium in Nashville, which is going to be also the temporary home of Nashville as they wait for their stadium to get built. They've sold somewhere north of 40,000 tickets right now, and we're not sure how many of them, but a big chunk of them are Atlanta fans who are going to make the road trip over to Tennessee and support their team in big numbers. So that should be a fun game with a big crowd, and I think they're giving away a fair number of tickets and really trying to get the number up to break the record for biggest soccer crowd in the state of Tennessee and things of that nature. So that'll be a fun one, and hopefully a competitive game on the field as well.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. There's a lot this season, and it is always fun to watch how expansion teams come into a league across any sport, because as you mentioned, there's usually the expectation they're going to come in and be like the rookie, the new team on the block, and just kind of take their lumps, figure things out, and then maybe year 2 will be better. But I think with Nashville, and as you talk about, especially with Miami and their history in the league, I don't foresee that happening this year anyways. So
MLS has made expansion a huge narrative, for better or for worse, really. There's pros and cons to it. It's been a huge part of their financial success and stabilization over the last 10 or so years. But it isn't stopping. We're going to be seeing at least one new team come online every year for the next few years. And it's a little destabilizing to other teams that can often lose players through the expansion draft. And but it does give you, again, lots of lots of talking points, and it's fun to see the top division game come to a new market where, hopefully big numbers of people get excited for it and come out and get their, grow the game in that particular market.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. As you talk about on the women's side as well as the men's side, as you're growing the game and as you're trying to reach more, increase your fans and audience, increase how many people are tuned in to actively follow throughout the course of a season and going out to games and, whatever it may be, just getting numbers up and getting excitement up too as well, with getting people more involved and wanting to rock their favorite player's jersey on whatever team it may be. That's huge to be able to expand each year and add, whether it's just one team or like the MLS has this year with 2 teams joining the league for 2020. It's needed. It's much needed. And it's great to watch how it's unraveling. And the MLS definitely did something right with the playoff format changing last year. I think they're everything, as we see on the men's side and the women's side, moving in the right direction. So very encouraging for us soccer fans. Where
Yes,
can our
indeed.
listeners follow you on social media and to keep up with all your work across the different outlets that you're contributing to as we get into the start of another soccer season?
Yeah, thank you. So on Twitter, I'm at CBOEHM. And folks, it's usually a good place to check in and try and post my work on there. Had some, was excited to make my fan-sided debut this week.
There you go.
Had a fun piece that I worked with John Wilkinson there about the original MLS clubs. The sort of the flip side to the expansion boom is that the 9 founding clubs that date back to '96 in a lot of ways are some of the most underperforming teams in the league, as much off the field as on the field, and in big markets where there's not as much relevance as some of the younger teams have generated. So it's an interesting challenge to try and bring up the OGs, that laid the foundations, but are maybe have a harder time with their marketing, their identity, the sizzle, because they've been around for longer, and that's not always a benefit, even though tradition is such a big part of soccer around the world. We kind of have a more complex relationship with our history in American soccer. So that's another thing that I think we'll be talking about in the months ahead, and I hope folks go and check out that article as well, and drop me a tweet whenever.
I love it. That sounds like a great piece. I'm excited for that. That'll be
Thanks.
really good. I mean, it is a view and a perspective that's not always addressed. Everyone was always so excited to talk about the expansion team that we always forget about the originals, the OGs, as you say. I like that. So, Charles, thank you so much for joining the show. It's been a pleasure having you here on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. And I am curious to know, before we completely, wrap this up, your biggest soccer memory. I saw that you did your top soccer moments, of course, of the decade, which a lot of people were doing, going back and reflecting on the decade. But I'm curious to know, over the last year, as we get ready for another MLS season, NWSL season, She Believes Cup, all the exciting things that are happening as the spring is kicking off, your most exciting moment from last year. I've stalled enough to give you time to think. So I'll let you take it away.
The year from now, this is an interesting one. This is good. So I have to say, it's kind of an easy one, but I was fortunate enough to get to go cover MLS Cup, and it was somehow, despite having covered the league, full time and part time over the last decade plus, I'd never been up to Seattle to experience that. And you talk about paradigm shifts in MLS. The Sounders really pushed things forward when they came in the league now 10 years ago. But I hadn't gotten up to CenturyLink Field, and so what a fantastic first visit it was to watch them play Toronto FC and MLS Cup, a sold-out NFL-sized stadium, a club that really has a special relationship that dates back decades in various forms with its city and its people. And that really was amazing, the way that the Sounders and soccer in general took over this beautiful American city for a weekend. And so that's probably going to be my pick.
I do. That was fun. I was not in Seattle, but I was watching the excitement around that. And honestly, it was great to see. Seattle was like shaking. I mean, there were actual reports about how the excitement from the cheering and everything was just.
Yeah, I think it was a Richter register. Yeah, and I have to say, I know people around elsewhere in MLS get tired of us singing their praises, but in general, the Cascadia teams, and in particular, I haven't gotten up to Vancouver yet, but Portland and Seattle, no matter how much you love soccer, even if you're not that into soccer, get to a game there if you ever possibly can. Put that on your sports bucket list, no matter where you're from or what your perspective is, because in Portland, Seattle, soccer is just different. It's just on a different level, and it's a great experience for any sports fan.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because it is always good to hear people's, experiences like yourself being able to get out to the MLS Cup. So I'm sure that was like an all moment, like, wow, look where I am right now,
Yeah, it's nice. You got to give yourself some of those.
Exactly. We need those moments to reflect. But thank you again for joining Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington this week. It's been a pleasure having you on as we prepare for the start of spring soccer across all leagues, all sports, all ages. And it's been a pleasure having you here, Charles.
Likewise. Thanks, Renee.